Good morning, Mrs. Jones. My name is Veronica Hardina, and I'm a newly registered psychologist practicing in the eastern suburbs of Sydney for nearly 18 months now. I have identified an ethical issue with one of my clients, and I will take you through my ethical decision-making process using the 7 stages from the adapted version of the Kucher-Keith-Spiegel model. This problem with my client surfaced after 3 months of therapy treating her for anxiety and depression. She revealed to me that her eating disorder had returned. The main ethical concern in this case is my lack of competence, knowledge, and experience related to the eating disorder. If I were to treat my client for this disorder without competence, I would also be contravening 2 other key ethical principles, that of non-maleficence, which is the concept of doing no harm. Kitchener describes it also as not inflicting harm nor engaging in actions which risk potential harm to others. The other ethical principle is that of beneficence, which is the concept of doing good. Mattisek says it means that it requires professionals to work within areas of competence. The other competing ethical dilemma in this case is the right to autonomy. This means that psychologists respect the client's right to participate in making decisions affecting their lives. Mattisek states that autonomy includes respecting others' autonomous decisions, despite believing that another's choice is mistaken, harmful, or wrong. Stage 2 looks at the APS principles and standards. Competence is a standard under the general principle B, propriety. Beneficence and non-maleficence are both ethical principles found under this same general principle B. The other ethical principle of autonomy is included in the general principle A, respect for the rights and dignity of people and peoples. The value trap that I would have to worry about is my very big concern in leading a very healthy lifestyle consisting of daily exercise, good sleep, and a balanced diet. Now, this could have an bad impact on my client because my size, my physical appearance, and the way I dress may negatively impact on her recovery because it may inadvertently reinforce her relationship, her negative relationship, I should say, with food. Maybe an offhand comment from me, such as my thoughts on the benefits of strict exercise and that of fasting, could also contribute negatively to her recovery. The rights that I would have in this case would be rights to autonomy, which include personal and professional rights. Davidson gives an example that a psychologist has right to practice without fearing for reputation or livelihood and has the right to defend themselves against unreasonable claims of malpractice. The client also has rights to autonomy, privacy, and respect from a psychologist, the right to therapy, moral and legal rights. My client would be vulnerable with the fact that she may be financially strapped, and also maybe her family would not be able to help her to pursue a proper treatment plan. I would feel vulnerable because of my previous association with my sister's anorexia. She was hospitalized due to various suicide attempts arising out of her eating disorder. The result of this would be that I would probably conflate my sister's experience with that of my client. I would become too emotional, too invested, and too personal. This is a problem because my objectivity and my professionalism towards my client would be compromised. Examples of how this could be manifested would be maybe if I send too many texts out of working hours, and I could probably be burnt out. Some of the solutions I could follow. Option A would be to continue treating her for anxiety and depression and her eating disorder. And option B would constitute a combination of an approach consisting of collaboration with a multidisciplinary team. This would look like me continuing to treat her for anxiety and depression, and I would seek additional training to obtain qualifications and expertise. And before reaching this expertise, I would refer her to a specialist team in eating disorders, which would include a psychologist and a dietitian. The possible consequences of each of these decisions are as follows. Option A, which was to continue treatment as is, the positive would be that the therapeutic relationship would continue honoring the client's wishes. The negative would be that the client would not be receiving the most effective treatment. I would be working in an area without proper qualifications. I may have a complaint submitted for unethical behavior, and I would be bringing disrepute to the psychology profession. This option would be placing preference on autonomy over competence, maleficence, and beneficence. Option B, the combination approach, the positives would be that I would be continuing support for my client. She would not feel abandoned. I would obtain credentials with the Australian and New Zealand Academy for Eating Disorders, and I would be establishing a best practice approach, which is based on a multifaceted treatment. The negatives are that the client would have to forge new relationships with practitioners, despite maybe her resistance for a period of time. And the client or family may not have the means to pay for so many specialists. I believe that this option would respect clients' partial autonomy while ensuring competence, maleficence, and beneficence. I would decide to follow a combination approach because I find it is the most workable solution based on the best information I have at the time. As mentioned before, it consists of the continued treatment for the client for depression and anxiety. And at the same time, I would refer to the psychologist and dietitian, which both have specialty in eating disorders. And once I have obtained the necessary qualifications, I would offer my client the treatment in this area. The best way forward to implement this would be for me to get credentialed through the peak body, that is ANZAID, and they require for me to pursue training, which would include the introduction to eating disorders, and evidence-based treatment models. I would need a minimum 2 years of mental health clinical practice. I would need 6 hours of supervision specifically on eating disorders, and I would need to do 15 hours per year continual professional development. Thank you very much for listening to me.